Good afternoon and welcome to Mind Being Well Therapy and Wellness. Welcome to our climate change seminar. And this is a seminar about climate change and how it can affect, the effects of climate change and how those effects can affect our mental health essentially. So, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, and I won't say good night, but good evening. Um, Today, I want to explain to you what climate change is for those of you who are uncertain about it, and also we'll delve into the different consequences of climate change and the possible consequences of climate change, and how those consequences affect us um, and our mental health. And then we'll dive into the possible things that we can do to make sure that we're mentally healthy and to make sure that we combat these consequences and make sure that they don't affect us if we have a disorder, or make sure that we don't develop any new disorders. So we'll dive right in to explaining what exactly is climate change. So we've heard many explanations for climate change, and the easiest way for me to explain what it is it is a basically what it's saying is a climate change, global or regional climate pattern change. Particularly sometime in the mid to late 20th century and onwards, we saw an increase in carbon dioxide produced and fossil fuels. The excess use of fossil fuels created increased. Well, the theory is the increase of fossil fuels increased the Earth's climate or temperature. If you know anything about the greenhouse effect, the use of carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, nitrous oxide, etc., basically bad gases, are literally warming our planet in an unnatural way, until the point that it may be uninhabitable for us. So the different consequences of this warming can render the earth uninhabitable. So, there are many predictions about what will happen within the next, now it's becoming next 5 years, because we haven't adequately answered the question of how to deal with climate change. And since we haven't answered that question adequately, we are heading to I think in 2016, there was a 2-degree temperature change in uh, the Earth's atmosphere, which is not a good thing. So we're steadily increasing our temperature. Um, we've risen, yeah, about 1.62 is what I was reading. And last year, between January and September, we had the highest record temperature of all of those months ever. January, February, March, with the exception of June um, last year. So that's according to NASA. So many scientists are saying that we're increasing the Earth's temperature rapidly because of our dependence on fossil fuels. So without adapting to the changing climate, a lot of our countries will see a decline in yields of um, agricultural production by 10% in the next 25 years. So, it's a very serious problem. Scientists have predicted that in 2050, even up to $106 billion worth of coastal property will be below sea level. So if you have a house and a beautiful house on the coast, which I love the coast, it could be flooded. There's a lot of floodings that are going on, and we know about those. We see those in the news all the time. And it is suggested that those floodings are a result of our dependence on fossil fuels and many other things. So, the excess production of which it can be produced by overgrazing of animals and increased production of unnatural animals, and just our driving planes and all that nature. But I don't want to get into the political talk about climate change. Basically, deal with the scientific research and stick to that. And always do your own research when it comes to climate change or anything that may be rendered scientific or political or social, anything of that nature, because you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding. You're not taking my word for it or anyone else, and I'm not a scientist. I am a psychologist, and so I can't give you concrete, completely accurate information about climate change. Well, at least, it's accurate, but not, what's the word? I can't help you understand it as well as a climate scientist. So maybe on YouTube you can look up a few climate scientists and see what they have to say. But we're definitely warming up our planet at unnatural rates, and it affects, the consequences can be horrendous. So what I want to talk to you about though is how those consequences can affect our mental health. We all know that the physical environment affects our mental health, whether it be our physical social environments, family environments, or simple changes in temperature. They all affect our well-being and our mental health. Many microcosms affect the way we feel about ourselves, the way we feel about others, our energy levels, our ability to commit and learn, intellectual abilities, all of that. And so we need to discuss how these consequences of climate change can affect our mental health and how they may already be affecting our mental health, and deal with, talk a little bit about how we can change that. Excuse me, how we can change that. So one of the big factors that we're focusing on when it comes to climate change is heat. And so we'll start off with how heat affects our mood and can bring on some symptoms of different mental illnesses. So scientists are saying that climate change can bring unprecedented heat waves. So some of those heat waves have already occurred. We warm or regulate our body temperature in various ways. Sometimes we get cozy with blankets or foot pads, heating pads, or things of that nature, or just cuddling up with someone. And if we're feeling chilly, we oftentimes go out and sit out on park benches and just sit under the sun. And if we are feeling a bit warm or too warm, we can turn on the air conditioner or a ceiling fan or something of that nature. So we oftentimes find ways of regulating our body, so our body temperature. So if we can't, and it's inescapable heat, and we've all felt that feeling where it's just extremely hot, and we seem to not be able to do anything about it. And when that happens, we've all experienced the rush of agitation and misery as a result of it. So what happens when we are hot? As I said before, agitation. And so increased body temperature causes overwhelmingly increased, as I said before, agitation, and with that comes a sort of dissociation from normal thinking. But uh, let's go back a bit. First, let's start with the physical symptoms of heat, being overheated. Uh, heart conditions can symptoms of heart conditions can increase. Blood pressure can increase. Um, Problems with circulation, such as asthma, can the symptoms of that can increase. Lung, kidney, liver functions can deteriorate. Dehydration, chronic dehydration, metabolic conditions, diabetes, sweat gland, and sweating conditions can increase. So high levels of humidity, community, it affects concentration, and it oftentimes contributes to lower levels of concentration. So as we know, we need our concentration for our jobs, schoolwork, just our daily ability to perform operations such as driving, or cooking. And so problems with concentration agitate symptoms of many mental health disorders. Particularly, we experience heightened confusion when we have an inability to concentrate. Uh, we experience a lot of individuals who have ADHD, anxiety disorders, and concentration deficit disorder, due to high levels of humidity, experience high levels of confusion and low levels of concentration. And so, high humidity is extremely troublesome to individuals with ADHD and anxiety disorders. It greatly decreases their ability to concentrate, or all of us. And so that would be, again, incredibly problematic to an individual who is already suffering with or having some problems with concentration. So high humidity can also increase sleepiness and sludgery. And so if you have a problem with sleep apnea, or you already have a condition that prevents you from getting the adequate amount of sleep, or you have another sleep condition, high humidity will increase the negative effects of that condition, because it causes a sort of lethargy and sluggishness. It can either interrupt your sleep or cause you to sleep a little bit too much. So studies have suggested that those dealing with depression, ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, suffer the most with sleep deregulation. And so if there is a problem with regulating body temperature, or if you're just uncomfortable because of the heat, having an interrupted sleep pattern will greatly affect your dealings in social situations, because of, your energy levels are down, and you just simply don't feel good physically, and your concentration levels will be down. And also, you will have an inability, in other words, you'll have an inability to concentrate and properly function. And at the same time, you won't get any sleep. Further, if there are other symptoms that are plaguing you, and you don't have, where you need to relax, and you have any sort of disorder where relaxation is a definite coping mechanism for you, then high humidity is not going to contribute to the positive things that you need to do for yourself to combat your symptoms. So another thing is, heat waves are related to violent behavior and aggression. They also increase drug and alcohol abuse for those of you who are suffering with substance abuse problems. So, because heat naturally affects uh, your mental state, and it naturally and it oftentimes affects um, mental confusion, causes discomfort, fatigue, and stress. This stress and comfort caused by heat, discomfort, I'm sorry, discomfort and stress caused by heat oftentimes results in unwise thoughts and behaviors. Stress can kill brain cells and even reduce the size of the brain. And so, chronic stress has a shrinking effect on the prefrontal cortex. And as we know, our prefrontal cortex is an area of the brain that is responsible for our memory functions and learning functions. And so, if heat directly diminishes those capacities, then it definitely has a negative effect on our ability to regulate stress. So, um, stress, memory, we can suffer from memory loss, and again, there's the learning and concentration. So, another thing that heat can do, our immune system. Our immune system is really important for helping us to fight off infectious diseases, viruses, bacteria, you know, dozens of things. And as we know, if we interrupt our sleep patterns and just our body becomes a little off kill, then our immune system can't properly activate. And if it's not properly activated, it can't keep our body safe. So chronic stress and prolonged activity of the immune system negatively affects all brain functioning. So that's another, I was reading here, there's another issue with these increased heat waves and what they can do to mental functioning. Cortisol in the brain. Levels of cortisol wear down the brain's ability to function properly. And heat waves cause an increase of cortisol. It's a compound found within the brain, cortisol. And this may increase cycling in people with borderline personality disorder. If you don't know about cycling, what cycling is increased periods or prolonged periods of depression followed by or preceded by periods of mania, which is like a heightened super person state. So cycling can become far more rapid when we have heightened levels of cortisol, and because they cause a wearing down of our brain's ability to function properly, and a wearing down of our immune system and things of that nature. So I wanted to mention that. And let me see, displacement and immigration. That's a big one because that's happening to us right now. Climate change is going to cause, and it is currently causing, based on wildfires and flooding, mainly right now. As time progresses, it will be with agriculture, but we'll deal with that later. So it will cause displacement in a lot of people. And because these areas that are heavily wooded or are more rural will become uninhabited for those people. Hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, barren lands, etc. I mean, that will all cause problems and cause people to move and have to shift. Well, as we can see, this is already causing a tremendous amount of problem. So people are not equipped yet to deal with a lot of cultural differences. We thought we were, but I guess we aren't. So, what's happening now is that the natural disasters in and of themselves cause a lot of social anxiety and social distressors because the people that are leaving these affected places, oftentimes these individuals experience a lot of social, cultural, and economic stress. And in displacement, they lose everything economically, and oftentimes they lose a lot of social and cultural ties when they're moving to a new country, a new place, a new city, even in some cases. The infrastructure may even be different. If you're moving from, say, the Amazon forest to Chicago, that is a tremendous cultural shift. And then the people in Chicago are not going to know how to relate to people coming from the Amazon forest. So we have culture clashes at different times and just an uneasy feeling. And the stress of that definitely affects mental health. Um, Recent studies have shown that long-term stress causes problems with uh, memory. Again, the structure of the brain changes. Um, our nerve cells or the gray matter of our brain um, and the connections between the structure of our cells and the gray matter in our brain, it becomes, for lack of saying the word gray again, it becomes a little muddled and it causes distress on us. And again, we have problems with all sort of normal bodily functions and normal physiological functions, such as I said before, levels of concentration, sleep. A lot of things are deregulated for us during times of that kind of stress. And so some of the distress that we experience are emotional. They're emotional reactions to direct or gradual impacts of climate change. And they oftentimes include a lot of anxiety, depression for what you've lost. You know, you've lost these family ties, you've lost all that you know. And a lot of times you've lost a lot of things economically. A lot of these people have lost their homes and things of that nature. So a lot of people experience a lot of grief. And then sometimes people have lost actual family members. And so they're going to go through depression and PTSD from how they may have lost those family members during the time that they lost those family members. So a lot of grief, loss, depression, and even PTSD can be formed during times of, and many other disorders, during times of displacement. Relationship strains, interpersonal relationship strains between just two people. Climate change has a potential to impact those strains as well. It strains how communities and individuals relate to each other. How does it do this? When there's not a sense of belonging in a community, then what oftentimes happens is we see uh, a disconnect. And this disconnect between and among people can cause an increase in violence and crime, aggression, even an increase in domestic abuse. And here again, it can cause an increase in substance abuse. And the reasoning for this can be because it can be harder for the displaced individuals to find work, which will directly affect them economically. It may be harder for children to learn. Jobs may be, the structure in certain job settings may be dramatically different, which will then affect work environments. So all these things will be, different. And so the interpersonal relationships developed after being displaced, and the ones that we already have with family and friends that are displaced along with us, will dramatically change because of just the stress and agitation and grief and loss and PTSD and things of that nature that we'll experience due to this displacement. A lot of people close up and won't express their feelings frequently, and we open ourselves up to isolation, and oftentimes just experience isolation, both the people who are displaced and the people whose communities they are moving into, because you know the lack of ability to relate to one another. So uh, again, the impacts of heat are tremendous for us, both because of the way it affects our brain functioning, as well as the way it affects sleep and just rest and our overall ability to be calm and rational. Displacement heavily affects our social, cultural, and economic stressors. And in doing that, it heavily affects possible symptoms of, as I said again, people with bipolar, PTSD, ADHD, anxiety disorders, and those who suffer from depression because of possible loss, grief, and social isolation. So that's another possible effect of climate change. Uh, the irregular seasons, crops, and animal changes that may occur during periods of climate change. Now, uh, first we'll deal with seasonal affective disorder. Now, many of us experience before daylight saving time. We hate when it gets dark early. It makes us feel a little moody, a little depressed. That is, or when the springtime comes, people feel invigorated. A lot of people. And so, if you've experienced some of those things and they are chronic, meaning that they affect the way that we deal with other individuals, or they actually affect our physical being or our daily functioning, then check with your doctors or therapists, because it can actually be seasonal affective disorder. And so that's like a major irregularity um, of your emotions and daily functioning. So, what will happen in climate change is that seasons will actually become irregular, and they already are, as a matter of fact. And so, individuals with seasonal affective disorder will experience symptoms times 10 because of this. Because if you uh, say love the summer or the winter and not the summer, this overheating of the earth will bring more summer months. And if you are a winter lover, then if you experience symptoms of SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, then you'll experience those symptoms times 10. And so we've got to find a way to get around that. So some symptoms of seasonal affective disorder are poor appetite, weight loss, again, all of the things I mentioned before, such as concentration, lack of sleep, meaning insomnia, agitation, anxiety, all those things. So there's some evidence that SAD is related to the body's level of melatonin. Some scientists have suggested that, and that's a hormone that's secreted by the pineal gland. It regulates our sleep and wake cycle. And so darkness stimulates the production of melatonin. So if it is perpetually dark, then, or even perpetually, say for instance in Alaska where there are like 30 days of darkness. If you are a person who loves the sunshine and the darkness makes you a little depressed, then more dark days than light days is going to have a serious effect on your cycles of depression and things of that nature. So if you have a problem, if you're a person with seasonal affective disorder and you have a problem regulating your levels of serotonin and melatonin. Uh, and usually you produce less or more vitamin C and vitamin D. And if you have a problem with these things, then what's going to happen is that in these times when climate change is occurring, it's going to cause it's going to completely throw you off of your sleep cycle and eating habits and just overall healthy functioning. And so that's another possible negative effect to people with different types of disorders of climate change. And so it's something to take note. One other neglected thing to mention in climate change is how our food is going to be affected. Due to different factors that are going to occur in climate change, a lot of our food is going to either disappear because it can't grow, or it will overproduce. And there are going to be both negative and positive effects to that. Case in point, the climate in Siberia, for instance, is expected to improve food production and local economic activity. And I'm reading this at least in the short to medium term. Whereas in Bangladesh, Bangladesh has experienced an increase in climate-sensitive diseases such as malaria, childhood diarrhea, and pneumonia among more vulnerable, meaning poorer communities. Okay, so climate-related pollution can cause a number of diseases, including respiratory infections, heart disease, COPD, stroke, and lung cancer. Other health effects caused by air pollution, which is another effect of climate change, may include difficulty in breathing, wheezing, coughing, asthma can worsen, different existing respiratory diseases can worsen during times of air pollution. And air pollution is another big symptom of climate change. This may result in the increase in medication use and also doctors' visits, hospital admissions, and premature death, which again, the premature death will cause a lot of grief, depression, and loss, and also a lot of the physical problems. And medication increases could lead to substance abuse problems, especially with people who already have suffered with problems with substance abuse. So increases in going back to the food, because I kind of got off subject there, I'm sorry about that. Various climate changes, as a matter of fact, increase our disability, so to speak, to produce the proper food that we need to replenish our body and keep our bodies healthy. So an example of that is an increase in moisture due to rising sea levels. Let me get this completely right. It produces pests and diseases. Droughts can starve our livestock. This decreases livestock productivity. Heat stress can disrupt plant production, plant pollination, flowering, root development. For those of you that are farmers, I'm just getting into it, so I'm just learning about it, and it's great. So I definitely know that heat stress can disrupt the soil, which will definitely have an impact on the food that we're growing out of our soil. So warmer waters cause fish to swim further from human reach. This will deplete vitamin B sources, and we need our vitamin B sources for energy and a whole host of things that we need our vitamin B. In one study that I'm looking at, rice grown with elevated CO2 concentrations contains 17% less vitamin B1, 17% less vitamin B2, 13% less vitamin B5 and 30% less vitamin B9 than rice grown under CO2 levels. So, because plants use carbon dioxide to make their food, more CO2 in the atmosphere can enhance crop yields in some areas if other conditions like nutrient amounts, soil moisture, and water availability are right. But the beneficial effects of rising carbon dioxide levels on plant growth can be offset by extreme weather, drought, or heat stress. Higher CO2 levels can stimulate plant growth and increase the amount of carbohydrates that plants produce. This comes at an expense, oftentimes, to our protein development, vitamin content, and mineral content. Vitamin B deficiencies cause problems with concentration, depression, again, anxiety. Vitamin B or omega 3 supports our healthy brain functioning. Low levels can lead to depression, mood shifts, poor concentration, again, and attention deficit. Protein deficiencies can cause moodiness, sensory imbalance. It's made up of amino acids, and these are the precursors to our neurotransmitters. And our neurotransmitters are consistently and constantly talking to each other. And so we break up that consistency when we don't get our vitamin B minerals. And so a lot of our minerals are found they're found in all of our dairy, protein, and carbohydrates. And so if we're not getting the adequate amount that we need, then that's going to cause a serious shift in our moods and our physical health. And so definitely, if we cannot produce the adequate amount of our nutrition that we need in our oceans, lakes, seas, our soil, then it would, and I forgot to mention this, if we don't, if we're not able to actually receive imports, then, we will have a major crisis on our hand based on the symptoms that we may experience or that we do experience based on the different mental illnesses that individuals have. So I'll go over this as easily as I can, as I can remember. The long and short of it, and these are only a few, a very slim few of things that can affect our mental health that are symptoms of climate change, and that is heat definitely, and that's the big one, is that we're heating up the earth. So heat is a big one. Heat affects us. Immigration is going to affect us socially, culturally, economically, and also the different shifts in seasons will affect most of us. Basically, those will affect us mentally and affect our moods. We'll have mood shifts based on that. It will just be an irregular idea to have longer or shorter summers and falls for people who are not used to that, for people who have the full 4 seasons in the states that they live in, or regions that they live in, more accurately. And so that's another thing. We also are going to have problems that could cause a lot of substance abuse, anger issues, crime. I mean, there are numerous effects of climate change that will greatly affect our mental health. So, how can we combat these things? And that's the happy part. There is hope to combating these things and trying to keep a healthy mental state. And so, one thing we can do is stay hydrated. If you drink at least, and this is the same old adage, drink 8 glasses of water a day. And a lot of us don't do that, but I'm here to tell you that By doing so, it's one of the primary things you can do to stay healthy and boost that immune system is to drink 8 glasses of water a day, and it's great. You can a lot of our water contains chemicals and pollutants already, and some of that's due to climate change, some of it's due to just dirty water pollution. And so, in drinking those 8 glasses of water, make sure that it's clean water. Because if it's not clean water, then you're further contaminating your body, and that defeats the purpose. So, in order to get clean water, what can you do? You can boil your water. You don't have to go out and buy these expensive things to filter your water. You can simply boil it if you don't have the money to do that. And you can boil it for 15 to 20 minutes, and that'll kill about 99.9% of living bacteria. So 10 to 15 minutes boiling water, and you've got yourself some better water than you had before. Another thing you can do is to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. And this is very important for children under 13. For for people under the age of 13, actually is 8 to 12 hours a day. For us adults is 6 to 8 hours, but for children, they want to get 8 to 12 hours of a rest. And I think something that can help our mood and also the atmosphere, meaning the air quality, is indoor plants. And what indoor plants do for us is that they actually clean the air for us. They also give us a little therapy by giving us the ability to care for something and nurture something. And so, it provides a little horticultural therapy by raising plants. And so indoor plants is another great thing to help to combat both the emotional and physical properties of climate change, excuse me. Some other things that you can buy that will help to calm you and are great are beeswax candles, essential oils, activated charcoal, clean air filters. You definitely want to get your clean. If you can't get the indoor plants, buy some clean air filters and put them in your air conditioners. And because clean air is a big help to you and to the oxygen that you breathe. And so that's another good thing to do. You want to clean your window treatments and your walls. It's a big thing. Invest in salt lamps. Himalayan salt lamps are great to look at. They make you feel awesome, and they also clean the air around you. So your Himalayan salt lamps are great. You can find them on Amazon or anything of that nature. So that's great too. Some more simple actions that you can do besides drinking your 8 glasses of water a day and also boiling it to make sure it is clean, and also buying the plants or your Himalayan salt lamps or beeswax candles, essential oils, burning sage to clean the air, cleaning your air filters and ducts in your home. Another thing you can do, make sure you get your exercise. Exercise can be easy. Walking, biking, carpooling, public transit instead of driving. These are things that you can do to both combat climate change by not contributing to the carbon dioxide problem. You can also do this because it'll help you to exercise more for those of us who don't like to exercise, but we need to get it in. You can get it in that way. So another thing you can do is simple things like checking your tire pressure. Of course, recycling. You can use hand-powered garden tools. Don't burn things in your backyard. Let's try to stay away from that. And you can reduce your heating needs by doing simpler things, more eco-friendly things to reduce your heating needs. let's talk about immigration and recovering from national or natural disasters. It's important to remember recovery takes time. So you don't want to rush yourself from recovering from natural disasters. Allow yourself time to process the fact that you have been dislocated. And if you haven't been dislocated, allow yourself time to deal with what has just happened and occurred in your life, because it's a gigantic life change, not big, gigantic. And allow yourself time. Oftentimes we feel an increased desire to get a number of things done when there's a natural disaster. We need to clean everything up. Take your time. That is the simplest advice. Take your time. Slow down. Give yourself time to heal and rebuild. Nothing will be built. As they say, Rome was not built in a day. And so you don't have to be either. Make sure that you talk to people. Talk to someone. See a therapist, psychologist, psychotherapist, wellness advisor, life coach. Talk to your grandmom, your mom, dad. Talk. You need to release your emotions and tensions. You need to talk to someone who you can trust and will give you an unbiased opinion. This helps to put things in a better perspective for you during a time when things seem extremely chaotic. So you want to talk. And also recognize when things are becoming overwhelming. And when things are becoming overwhelming, stop. And stop. And again, give yourself time. Just stop whatever you're doing and give yourself time. And after you've given yourself, when you feel ready, try and develop an action plan. Decide what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it before, you rush into action. Rushing into action oftentimes leads to stress, agitation, and more confusion. And one thing about becoming dislocated or having a natural disaster is that you do not need more confusion and stress. So develop an action plan before you move. You definitely don't want to cause more stress and bring more stress upon yourself. If you need help, again, be sure to ask for help. So again, it's important to talk to someone that you trust, and don't be afraid to ask for help or to seek help. Seek networks that will help with immigration or psychological needs, or if you are a person who suffers from a mental illness and you need to obtain your medicine and you don't have any sort of insurance in a new country, and you need to get your mental health needed, your mental health needs met. You can oftentimes do this by reaching out to people and finding a lot of resources in different countries to aid you in getting your medication and new therapists and psychotherapists and things of that nature. But please don't go without these things if you're in a new country or a new space, simply because either you feel like you have too much to do, or you're in a new place and you feel like you are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. You definitely need to speak to someone, reach out and get your medication, because these things will help you to deal with the situation that you're in. Now, another thing I want to talk about is children during natural disasters and children who are forced to immigrate. This is a big one to me because children experience things and aren't able to adequately express those needs and experiences that they're going through. And these are often harrowing experiences for young children, because children are oftentimes only beginning to develop foundations in their lives. And when these natural disasters occur, those foundations are severely stunted. And so helping children during natural disasters is paramount. and a lot of times paramount, and a lot of times as adults we just simply don't know how, or we feel like we neglect that because we're dealing with so much in moving or dealing with a natural disaster. And so one thing I like to say about this is that first you want to give your kids some attention and reassurance that everything is going to be okay, but don't lie to them. You know, you don't have to give them a horror story or grown up, quote unquote, problems. But you want to be honest, answer their questions, talk to them, give them a little bit more extra attention when you can. Um, Acknowledge their feelings and acknowledge your feelings. If children need to cry, cry with them. If you need to cry, it's important at this time that the children are able to bond with the people that they can trust, just as you need to bond with them, and also that you need to bond with someone you can trust. And your child can be not the person who takes on your problems from you, because they are only children, but a source of bonding for you, a bonding experience for you. So, and also, lastly, include your children in your plans. So when you get ready to, after you've spoken to someone and that you trust, and you've gotten help, and you're taking care of yourself, when you're making those plans, when you've gotten to the point where you're making plans, include your children in those plans. We definitely want to include our children and ask them where would they like to live, uh, how would they like to get there. Include them in the plans. That helps them to feel like, number one, it helps them to understand the process and understand what's going on. And it also helps them to feel like there's some sense of control over an otherwise extremely chaotic situation. So, definitely talk to them, give them attention, don't neglect them and keep them out of the processes that they are indeed a part of. So those are some of the things you can do when you have to immigrate because of natural disasters. Um, Seasonal affective disorder. Some of the treatment to alleviate the symptoms that we have or that we suffer from during different seasons or different times of day. If these different types of day or seasons affect our moods or cause negative moods in us, how do we deal with that? You can monitor your mood and energy level. Take advantage of, say, the sunlight or moonlight for some of us. Plan pleasurable activities during the times when you experience the most depression, or plan to rest. So you can plan pleasurable activities, you can plan to rest, or you can plan calming activities. Those are all things you can do to alleviate symptoms of SAD. But when symptoms develop, if you cannot eliminate them or alleviate them, when they develop, seek professional help immediately. If they are chronic symptoms, definitely seek professional help. So it is not a small problem, because it can lead to unprecedented depression and even suicidal thoughts in some. So definitely seek help. There are several relaxation techniques that you can do when you're trying to heal yourself from displacement, and when the heat is getting to you and there's too much, stress going on for different reasons, various reasons. You can do something that I like to call body scanning. And what this is this technique of relaxation it's blending what I call breath focus and progressive muscle relaxation. So you're basically just paying attention to your breathing and taking a scan of or focusing on each area of your body. Say your facial muscles. If they're tightened, you pay attention as you pay attention to your breaths. You close your eyes and pay attention to breaths, breathing in and breathing out. And while doing so, an example of this exercise is to pay attention to the muscles in your face and how tight they are. And if they're tight, practice breathing in and out until and loosening those facial muscles. And then after you experience the loosening of those muscles, where you feel more relaxed in your face, then go down to your shoulders and neck, and so on until you reach the soles of your feet. So it's a great exercise of just relaxing the entire body. That's one. Yoga, Tai Chi, guided imagery, repetitive prayer are all playing an instrument. As I said before, raising plants, playing with your dog. All these things are relaxation techniques that can be done to calm you down when you're feeling agitated and stressed. And so we don't want to be agitated and stressed. And so if you don't know what yoga is, or Tai Chi, or guided imagery, then you can look those up on YouTube usually, or just do a Google search. And those are great relaxation techniques that you can look up. And I'll probably do a video about stress relievers pretty soon here. So, where you should go for help. You definitely should go to your psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, or counselors, even social workers for the children. There are kid helplines. Google that. The Salvation Army is a great place and has great resources all over the world when you are displaced or when there is a natural disaster. St. Vincent de Paul is another great resource for individuals who have been displaced or recent immigrants. For state-specific within the United States, assistance, you can go to the Department of Human Services website. That's the Department of Human Services website. That's for people within the United States. You Google that. The National Bushfire Recovery Agency, that is another another place to get resources for displacement if your area has been ravaged by wildfire or any kind of fire of that nature that is a natural fire, so to speak. Another good website to go to is lifeline.org to obtain resources and things to help you if you've been displaced or if you are an immigrant. So, to wrap up, climate change, there are various things that may affect our mental health that are symptoms of climate change. The main things that you want to do, make sure you get enough rest, adequate nutrition to boost your immune system, keep you healthy. Make sure you're taking your medication if you take medication or something of that nature, and that you're seeing your therapist. Also, exercise. Again, make sure you're drinking clean water. Exercise. Walking, biking, things of that nature. And seek help. Talk to someone. If you need to talk to someone, seek help. Always seek help and talk to someone. So another good resource, learn some gardening and planting. It will be a good thing to do so that if there are any food shortages, you can hopefully produce your own food. there are things that there are a lot of videos on new techniques in soil, alternate ways of planting things, and I'm getting this a little confused, but alternate soil resources that you can use besides, regular soil. And so you want to look into some of that. I think there's like coconut extract of some sort that you can use to plant seeds and grow different vegetables and things of that nature. I think there are many permaculture and natural environmental groups who show you alternate ways of growing things. So a lot of them are on YouTube, and you can just do a Google search and try to find alternate ways of growing your own food. That will greatly help us in impacting and have a positive impact on the environment. If you want to learn how to plant trees, Google that. Learn how to plant trees and help to better our environmental situation, so that hopefully we can combat this thing before it becomes completely out of control. So, but all of the things that I mentioned today are things that we need to do anyhow, just to help ourselves relax and de-stress, and to keep our mental state healthy. But it is important to note that climate change is real, and it will have an effect on our mental stability just based on the symptoms and consequences of that climate change. So, I thank you for being here with me today. And if you have any questions, please stay here online and give those questions to me. I'll take any of those questions and we'll discuss. There is a place to make donations in case any of this has helped you. You can do that. You can also go to welltherapy.healthcare and make an appointment with me. I am a wellness coach and therapist. But for sure, today and every day, mind being well. I also have a video on alternate living spaces, eco living, and you might want to check that out. We did that for our webinar series on climate change, so I have that coming up too. But for today and every day, mind being well. Bye now.